All right, hey folks. I'm gonna slide this music down a bit so we can keep it out of the way. And let's fix my screen. Good evening, everyone. Let's see if the signal's coming through okay. Let's see if yeah, it sounds like it's coming through okay. Cool. Okay, we'll drop that down there. Let's get that volume out of the way. I've already grabbed my link. We're looking at Spelljammer Combat and Exploration. It is a 107-page document, basically rebuilding Spelljammer 5e to use 5e action, like character actions, bonus actions, reactions, movement, object interactions, to fuel action economy and ship combat. While characters use that action economy at the 5-foot scale, ships can use that action economy at the 50 and 500-foot scale. So here's your 5-foot scale for ships. A vessel is over 50 feet, anywhere from basically 50 to 500 feet. A craft, like a fighter craft or a landing craft, is anything up to 50 feet in size, basically 10 to 50 feet in size. So at the 50-foot scale, that means that a fighter craft is going to occupy at most 1 square at the 50-foot scale, while a vessel, like this hammerhead ship, the biggest ones that we currently have available for people in Spelljammer, is 250 feet long, which is a 5x5 space at the 500-foot scale. And then everything, all these types of ships can obviously occupy a 500-foot space. So when you're depicting ship combat with the medieval siege weaponry that we use, the maximum range we have to attack something is a mile away. So the 500-foot scale would then, the next magnitude would be 1 mile, then 10 miles, 100 miles, 1,000 miles, 10,000 miles, scaling up to 100,000 miles per day for a daily hex crawl. So in that manner, we can use the 5e action economy as though our characters were at the 500-foot scale. You're effectively depicting like a pixie in a dungeon that's like 2 feet tall, but it still occupies a 5-foot space. It's just a tiny sized creature, but it's still able to fly, like say 30 feet around, is going to move 6 spaces. And then you're going to engage with ships or other creatures and stuff like in the dungeon as a pixie, as you would in 5e combat. But now you can scale that up and consider that pixified character like if your druid had wild shaped into a butterfly. It's obviously tiny size, still occupying a 5-foot space. Similarly, in Spelljammer, the pilot is effectively wild shaping into, I see a little flaw there, that 5-foot, 50-foot. That's interesting. Give me a second here. We're doing updates for this document for 2024 because some rules have changed. And just to complete our conversation, or rather to not get in the way of further conversation, Spelljammer Combat and Exploration is on the DMsGuild here. Last week I was having issues with the preview, and it turned out that my Google Chrome was at its data cap. So when you download the document, you get the full 107-page book. When we were looking at spellcasting, though, there was weird mark effects on the PDF that I was looking at, and I thought I did something wrong when I reloaded it last week with some of the improvements that we had made. But it just turns out that Google Chrome had ran out of data, so it just ended up looking stupid. But you can read along with us. We're gonna drop down here to the compass and scroll here. That is the exploration chapter. You can see that same icon up here in the corner. So these icons here on the bottom row is a navigation bar that takes us to the different sections of the book. Like here's our conversion guide for Ladder Zaraxis. So like all the rules that we have in this book about combat and exploration, spellcasting, etc., hazards. It's all those mechanics are demonstrated in an adventure that presumably you'd be familiar with. If you're discontent with 5e Spelljammer, it probably means that you saw the Ladder Zaraxis adventure. So we use all these changes that we've made to the rules to make Spelljammer combat feel very similar to what 5e dungeon combat already feels. We're just scaling up to the 50 to the 500 foot square instead of a 5-foot square during combat. Very simple, straightforward. But you can use these, so we have like if you buy this thing, you get all the assets, like all the character tokens for pilots and crew on ships, all the ship icons, all the weapon crew icons for siege weapons, the map. We built the Ibn Snare encounter with the Night Spider ship. We turned it into an asteroid dungeon at the 500-foot scale, where the Neogi have spiderling fighter craft that are 40 feet in size, and then a Night Spider mothership. So your team is aboard the second wind? No, the Moon Dancer. That's right, the Moon Dancer, which has a ballista and 2 harpoon flingers, and that's it. So it doesn't have a lot of armaments. Oh no, it has 3 ballistas. That's right, and has 3 harpoon flingers that are positioned on the boat. 3 harpoon flingers off the back deck, 2 ballistas on the front, 1 ballista in the back, using the gyroscopic movements and repositioning of D&D flight combat on the 5-foot scale. We can orient the ship in any direction that we need at any time to be able to fire weapons at our crew without having to specifically worry about using group initiative, or assuming that we know group initiative exists. We can fake that during any character's turn, the pilot has the ability to tilt and move the ship around, so the weapons that you're firing can actually fire on your target without your ship getting in its own way. But we spent a lot of time talking about this in regards to 5e24 combat. But I was specifically up here in the combat chapter. I was specifically looking at the map. Looks weird. Oh no, it was just a resolution issue. Okay, everything looks good there. So we've gone through the combat chapter. We just finished spell casting on Monday this week, and after spell casting, we began exploration. So we were talking about scaling up. So if you're looking at being able to travel 100 million miles per day, right? Minor helms are like for fighter craft. Anything up to 50 feet can have a minor helm, which is described in the equipment section above. It moves slower than a major helm. Major helm can move anything up to 500 feet in size. Excuse me. So with a major helm or a standard spell jamming helm, it's 100 million miles per day, which breaks roughly down into 10 million miles per day, per every 2 hours, or roughly 5 million miles per hour. Every 10 minutes you can move 100. You can move 1 million miles every minute. You can move 100,000 miles, and then 6 seconds or a round of combat, 10 per minute, is 10,000 miles. So that means that on a combat map, if your typical speed is going to be 10,000 miles, and you're on a grid map, then each square in that grid could be 1,000 miles. And that would be move 10 squares, and that's the maximum movement your ship can make per turn. So as an object interaction, instead of movement, you can move 5 squares, and then if you take the dash action, you can move 5 more squares, and that'll cap out your ship's movement. But when we're dealing with exploration, we don't need to necessarily worry about how many spaces can you move per round, unless you're like in some sort of a trap, or like dealing with like sliding asteroids, like in the Neogi challenge that we have in Elias Araxis conversion down below. So we're just gonna do it. This is 10 pages. We're gonna do a read along with this, and then we have the Spelljammer Subclasses. This is a book that we're going to publish. We're gonna build it. We're going to get it edited, and then we're going to do page layouts, and then we're going to do all the artwork for this book on stream. Once this will become our primary art project once the Eberron adventure is completed. So we have a subclass for every class except for the Scion, which isn't official yet. So there's 13 subclasses in here, one for each official class. And then we have our Spelljammer Combat Exploration 5e24 changelog. We've already updated Chapter 1 and integrated it into a new document that we'll be publishing once all of this is integrated. But here's the combat chapter. and then the spellcasting chapter, and now we're into, let me actually grab that. We're in chapter 4 now, which is exploration. Do that. Okay, great. So we're set up. So we got our changelog going. Exploration. There we go. We're in the exploration chapter. It's 10 pages. Again, you can read along on the link down below in the book itself, in the preview, which is here. And yeah, so if you think this stuff is cool, consider like, subscribe, bell icon. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, but obviously game design like this isn't necessarily a popular algorithm thing, and it's just, and all the artwork, it's slow art, so I like do all the work that I do for each illustration. So I do a slow grind channel, and if you're into that stuff, God bless you, and I would certainly love to earn your support. So stick around for a little bit, see if you think this stuff is interesting, and if this is this kind of, if this jives with what you like. So thanks a lot for considering hanging out with me. Let's see. So let's go to, again, it's a read along. So let's read along. So while ship combat is generally mapped with 500 foot or smaller squares, because again, the maximum range for siege weapons in combat, to be able to hit a target if they aren't aware, if they're aware of you, is a mile away, which is 10 squares at the 500 foot scale. So you're either working on a 10 by 10 grid at the 500 foot scale, or you're working at the 50 foot scale if your ships are getting close and personal, or fighter craft. 5 foot scale if you're dealing with people on deck. And those are basically your those are your 3 scales in combat: 5, 50, 500. Anything that's a mile or more is too far away to engage in combat, so it automatically defaults to exploration, which doesn't necessarily need to worry about square movement per round, and again, unless you are dealing with traps or large scale hazards like asteroid fields and stuff like that. So then actually tracking movement per round becomes important, which could be anywhere from 5 foot squares to 1,000 miles squares. Because again, scaling distance, the distance a ship with a major spelljamming helm can travel uninterrupted is 100 million miles per day, while a ship with a minor spelljamming helm can travel 1 million miles. It's a smaller scale. It can also only move ships up to 50 feet, but we talked about that in chapter 1 earlier. You can check out the previous playlist if you want. This can scale down to convenient measurements of approximate distance over time while traveling in wild space. Again, we just walked over this. 1 day is 100 million miles, and that'll grind down to like a tenth of that is roughly 2 hours. So that's 10 million miles. Roughly a tenth of 2 hours is 10 minutes. So that's 1 million miles, or 5 million miles per hour, roughly. 1 minute is 100,000 miles, which is a tenth of 1 million, and then a round of combat is 6 seconds. That's a tenth of a minute. So you can move 10,000 miles, and then if we broke that down into a square, that could be 1,000 miles square, 100 miles square, 10 miles square, 1 mile square, 500 foot square, 50 foot square, or 5 foot square, and you're done. That's your full range of movement on a square by square basis. And then of course you could upscale from 10,000 to 100,000, a million. And if you're doing hex crawls through wild space, each square can be 100 million miles, and you're doing 1 square per day. If you wanted to have zoom in a little bit, you could have each square be 10 million miles per day. And like every 4 squares that they move, you make a random encounter check to see if they encounter anything 40 million miles later throughout the day. So you could get in potentially like 3 rolls per day. Daytime, evening, late nights, and those are your 3 time shifts that you would have for random encounters that could occur. And if you're operating on a hex crawl sort of style where each is 10 million miles, like say in a cluster of moons or something, that'd be a realistic distance to have. Then you could like say Selûne in Forgotten Realms is like 280,000 miles away from Toril. So at the 100,000 mile scale, that's 3 squares away. Or at the 1 million mile space, it's both Selûne and Toril in the same square. So you'd want to zoom into 100,000 miles so you can see a difference between where Toril sits at the center in a 100,000 mile square, and then 1, 2, 3 squares away at 280,000 miles away. That's where you're going to find the Munus Lunae. So, right. So those are scales, common map scales, as detailed in the combat chapter above. Maps can change scale to depict. Hey, Steve. Maps can change scale to depict different distances moved during a round of combat. Outside of combat, maps can similarly shift scale as characters travel between and explore different locations. Travel between and explore different locations. Yeah, that works. Below lists common map scales used in Spelljammer Adventures. 5 feet is the common grid size for each player character to move and take actions as individuals. 50 feet is the common grid size for ships to engage in close range combat. 500 feet is the maximum grid scale for ships to engage in weapon range combat. 10 miles is generally the minimum size for objects to have a spherical gravity instead of a gravity plane. So if your object in space is large enough to occupy 10 miles, but not a mile, you're at the 10 mile scale. That's going to allow you to have spherical gravity instead of planar gravity, which we'll go into more detail in this section down below. But we also detailed in the ship section above, like ship physics. At the 1 million mile scale, this is the maximum grid size a ship equipped with a minor helm can travel per day. 100 million miles is the maximum grid size a ship equipped with a major helm can travel each day. And 10 billion miles is an unusually large wild space system. I'm talking to you, Realm Space. You are ridiculously large. Like the and we have the Zaraxis map down below. It's like 400 million miles in size. That's it. It's tiny. So encountering objects to interact. Blah blah blah. That's our chart, and we have a big illustration of a kaiju purple worm or something. So sort of space worm trying to eat this ship. This was a very Empire Strikes Back, Millennium Falcon asteroid field moment. That's my inspiration there. So. No excuses. Visibility. Okay, so encountering objects. To interact with creatures, ships, and objects in wild space in the astral sea, they must first be encountered. While the Spelljammer Adventures in Space, that's the acronym, SAIS is the acronym for Spelljammer's Adventures in Space, which is the book set that Wizards of the Coast published. One second. This stuff is weird. Let's make things less weird. There, and there. There. Good. Okay. SAIS. So, Spelljammer's Adventures in Space asserts that a ship slows from traveling thousands of miles per round to about 50 feet when something significant is encountered. Spelljammer's Combat and Exploration reframes this narrative so that ships only slows in speed if the Spelljammer pilot chooses to do so. Details for encountering and interacting with objects and creatures while traveling are detailed in the section below, including like slamming into objects, how far away can you see them coming, what's your response time to incoming objects, so that maybe it'd be smart if you slowed your ship down so that the speed of your ship is matching the speed of the junk that's coming at you, so you have more than a reflex saving throw or a dexterity reaction to try to dodge something as a collision, potentially blowing your ship into smithereens anyway. So yeah, we'll go into that. So visibility. Below is the typical map scale and distance at which objects can be observed based on their size. And I just have a D10 table here to roll just randomly for whatever size object it is that you want. The dice size that can be rolled when determining the size of a random object encountered as detailed in the Scanning for Adventures sidebar down below. So on a scale of 1 to 10, we've got objects in size from 5 feet, 50 feet, 500 feet, 1 mile, 10 miles, 100 miles, 1,000 miles, 10,000 miles, 100,000 miles, 1 million miles. And here's examples of all that shit. A human, a fighter craft up to 50 feet in size, right? A vessel up to 500 feet. The Zaraxis Citadel is literally 1 mile in size. Rock of Brawl fits inside it. It's like, I think Rock of Brawl is like 7 miles, so it fits in, maybe it's 3 miles. 3 miles. 3 by 2 miles, I think is the actual dimensions. So it fits inside of a 10-mile space. Planet Anadia, which is the Mercury of realm space, that's 100. It fits inside of 100 miles. Planet Hakatha, which is home of beholders in realm space. It fits within a 1,000 mile space. The planet Toril is 8,000 miles in diameter, so it fits inside of a single 10,000 mile space. Planet Collier, also in realm space, and it's bigger than 10,000 miles, so it can occupy a 100,000 mile space comfortably. And then the central star, any random central star, is going to generally be 1 million miles in scale. So then you have your detect. So down here you can see that we have a random table for what size object it is. Object size is the size of a single object. Let's see. And we skipped example because an example is an example. So we have detection range, notice range, and detailed range, and then the DC. So detection range is the typical distance through which an orrery, like we were talking about orrery stations earlier, as sonar sweeping radar devices to pick up any objects that are coming that are within range. So detection range is the typical distance through which an orrery can detect an object of the listed size. Beyond the listed distance, intelligence and wisdom checks to detect an object are rolled with disadvantage. So, like, for example, to detect a human with an orrery station, they have to be within 1,000 miles of you. 1,000 miles, a 5-foot character, your eye is not going to pull that off. So we have the notice range, which is the typical distance at which you can notice an object of this size with the naked eye, but only general details. Beyond this range, up to 10 times the listed distance, intelligence and wisdom checks to notice an object are rolled with disadvantage. The detailed range, so if we're looking for a person with our naked eye, it just flying through the sky, we may have a chance. We could probably notice them. Like if they're wearing flashy clothing, we could probably notice them a mile away, but we wouldn't know who it is. Just say, hey, I think that's a person fleeing through space. And if we were to, so the DC to do so is 22. If they were up to 10 miles away, we could still potentially spot them, but our check would be at disadvantage, or our passive perception check would drop by 5. So I would have to be able to just casually smoking a cigarette and just glance up and notice that a human is flung by. I'd actually have to have a passive perception check of 22. If I was actively looking for trouble, because I'm on scout duty, for instance, then I would be making active detection checks, and my target number that I would want is a 22, because anything smaller than this is an insignificant threat to your ship. So this is basically the cap DC, or 20, or it becomes, the detection range is DC 28 at 1,000 miles. I could detect you up to 10,000 miles away with the orrery station. Yeah, but to notice you with a naked eye, I'd have to hit a DC 22. 10 miles, up to 10 miles away, I could roll with disadvantage, but beyond that point, at 100 miles, I have to start using an orrery station to be able to pick up on you. Or I just wait until you get closer. And then, I'll eventually see it because you're going to get within range, right? If I know you're coming. And then there's the detailed range. So detailed range is the typical distance at which you can observe minute details with the naked eye about the object. Beyond this range, up to 10 times the listed distance, intelligence and wisdom checks to observe details are rolled with disadvantage. So if you're within 50 feet, you're going to generally be able to make out details about, maybe you could read their name tag, depending on how good your vision is. But the DC is only a 16 to be able to scope out, like, who is that? I know who you are. Why you got that look on your face? But if they're up to 500 feet away, it might be really difficult to make out who you are. Like at the end of a football field, yeah, hey, who is that specifically? I think that's Lars. Okay, cool. And so if you're looking for fighter craft that might be attacking your ship, you can pick up on them. DC 25, you can pick up on them 10,000 miles away. Up to 100,000 miles away, I could hit that with disadvantage. So my passive detection check would be a DC 30, which is the maximum potential in the game. 10 miles for noticing a fighter craft incoming. 500 feet, you can make out like specific emblems on the ship, or even like who's piloting it, maybe. Actually, who's piloting it specifically would be a disadvantage because they're only 5 feet in size. But you'd definitely be able to tell what fleet is that fighter craft from, or what make is it, what model, what kind of material is it made from, blah blah blah. And then of course, like the Hammerhead ship, you could pick up on it 100,000 miles away on an orrery station. Notice that 100,000 miles at maximum speed is a minute. So the orrery station is capable of picking up on another spelljamming ship a minute away. You have 10 rounds to notice that ship is incoming, and for you to decide if you want to intercept them or try to evade them. And then they could attempt, if they pick up on you, they could attempt to intercept or evade you. And then that becomes, if one is trying to intercept and the other one's trying to evade, that becomes a pursuit. If you're both trying to evade, then you avoid each other, nothing happens. We'll talk about that later on. So orrery scans. So did I finish my example here? DC. So we go. Okay, for example, detecting a 250-foot vessel that is 100,000 miles away through an orrery is a DC 22 intelligence, insight, or investigation, or wisdom perception check. If the ship is farther, the roll is made with disadvantage. Orrery scans. A wild space orrery is enchanted to automatically detect all significant planetary objects within a wild space system, typically objects 10 miles or larger in diameter. As an action, a creature that focuses on an orrery can also attempt to scan for objects within the system by making a detection check, which is an intelligence, insight, or investigation, or wisdom perception check. Compare the results against the DC of object listed above. The orrery detects objects with a DC equal to or less than the results if they are within the listed detected range above. Detecting objects smaller than 10 miles in size is imprecise. If objects smaller than 10 miles occupies the same space or is adjacent to a larger object, the larger object will prevent the smaller from being detected until it is close enough to be noticed with the naked eye. So you can hide from an orrery scanner by finding an object that you can hide inside of its shadow or within its mass, so the orrery can't separate your signals on the radar one from each other. The DM determines when a new detection check can be made, such as after finishing a short or long rest or after combat. Void tracking. As an action taken while focusing on an orrery, a character can make a detection check against the DCs listed above to detect an object that has been previously observed but isn't currently detected. Roll 2 void tracking. So as an action taken while focusing on an orrery, a creature can make a detection check against the DCs listed above to detect an object that had been previously observed but isn't currently detected. So you know it's out there, now you just have to find it. So you're like scrying for a specific object. So roll 2d20 together. If the DM determines the object is within the listed detection range above, use the higher result to determine if the object is detected. If the DM determines the object is beyond the listed detection range, use the lower result. If a ship or creature is attempting to hide, use the result of the hiding DC as the DC instead of any DC listed above that are lower. So if I rolled a 27 on my hide check with my fighter craft, and I'm a million miles away, and you know I'm out there somewhere, fighter craft, a million miles away, you're going to be rolling with disadvantage because your detection range for a fighter craft is typically only 10,000 miles. So if I rolled a 27, your DC is 27, and you're going to roll twice, and you're going to take the worst roll, the disadvantage. So chances are, if I can duck behind that moon, you are not going to find me unless you come to that moon and search for me along the surface. Making sense, right? Class features and other abilities that can affect tracking creatures or objects can be used with the detection checks as well. Multiple creatures aboard the same ship can track together as a group check.
Instead of using the help action, each participating creature focuses on an orrery and makes a detection check, rolling only 1d20 each instead of 2. The group uses the highest and lowest results of the group as detailed above. If both results fail, the DM indicates that the intended target is not detected. If the higher result succeeds, the target is detected if it's within the range listed above. If the lower result succeeds, the target is detected if it's beyond the range listed above. While you maintain focus on an orrery and the target remains observed, the result of the check becomes the DC for the target to hide from you tracking it. So if that rogue with its 27 is trying to hide from a patrol that somehow rolled a 30 on their detection check, they can see where you're going, and they can see that you're hiding behind that moon, and maybe they won't make it so obvious that they're heading that way, so maybe they can catch you by surprise. Noticing objects. So the same procedure of rolling 2 dice to detect objects within or beyond orrery range can be applied to noticing object with the naked eye. Similarly, multiple creatures can work together to make group ability, investigation, perception, and insight checks, such as looking for secret doors in a dungeon or while more than one creature is keeping watch. For example, 2 characters camping in the woods decide to keep watch together. Both make a wisdom perception check, resulting in a 21 and a 12. While peering into the surrounding forest, the 21 can determine a creature larger than 5 feet in size is making noise, pushing through the underbrush of trees, possibly miles away. Perception check is 21. Notice a 21 is better than 19. So it could be anything 5 feet or larger, and it could be a mile or more away. Accurate. A 12. A result of 12 would be noticing the Zarax's Citadel in orbit above your planet all of a sudden. Yeah, 12's not as good. While peering into the surrounding forest, the 21 can determine a creature larger than 5 feet in size is making noise pushing through the underbrush of trees, possibly miles away, but the character won't be able to identify what it is until they are within 500 feet. DC 12. We rolled a 19. We rolled a 21 as our good score, and then 500 feet. The 21 beats that. It also beats 50-foot scale, but anything that's 5 feet or larger in size, we've already picked up on it. If it's within 500 feet and larger than 5-foot scale. But the characters won't be able to identify what it is until they are within 500 feet. And again, something that's larger than 5 feet in scale is 500 feet to detect, is 500 feet to make out details. And the 21 stands because that's the better result, because it was within range. So that's noticing objects. Scanning for adventure. This is a sidebar that was mentioned above with the D10 table. So go back up here to the visibility table, D10. The die size that can be rolled when determining the size of a random object encountered as detailed in the Scanning for Adventures sidebar below. So, scanning for adventure. The DM can use orrery scans to introduce adventure plot hooks or random encounters. When you make a detection check, the DM can use this result as a passive detection score to compare against any new objects that may enter within range of the scan or attempt to approach the ship undetected while the scanning creature maintains focus on the orrery. Alternatively, using the visibility table above, the DM can roll a d10 to determine the size of a random object that is encountered. The DM can limit the results by rolling a d4 for smaller scale objects or a d6 plus 4 for larger scale objects. Additional procedures for creating a random system is detailed in Appendix 1 below, which is hyperlinked. So you see there, if you roll a random encounter and you determine there's going to be one, then you can roll a d10 or a modifier therein to determine the size of the object. Like say you roll a d4. It's to keep things finite. The object that you encounter will be anywhere from 5 feet to 1 mile in scale. And now you know, and so like, let's say I rolled a 3. So it's 500 feet. It's the size of a vessel. You're going to encounter a vessel. So we know that you'll be able to detect it within 100,000 miles with a DC of 22. So when you do your random encounter, you should have, of course, already had your team make a scanning check at the beginning of their watch so that that perception check can just stand for the watch until they change watch, and then you can roll a new perception check or have an encounter. So if they had rolled, and we're looking for a vessel, if the scanner that's on duty doing sweeps, if they had rolled a 22 or better, they'll be able to notice a vessel when it gets within 100,000 miles of you. If you failed that die roll, say 10,000 miles could reduce the difficulty of that to 19. 1,000 miles could reduce it to a 16. 100 miles could reduce it down to 13. 10 miles could reduce it down to 10. 1 mile could reduce it down to 7. 500 feet, a 4. 50 feet or closer is a 1. So when you make your detection range check, you'll know how far away, as the result of the DCs here, you'll be able to tell what the size of the object is and what distance you're supposed to be able to detect it. But as your result gets higher, the distance becomes greater. So you could notice, like if I rolled a 25, I could notice them 1,000,000 miles away. If I rolled a 28, I could notice them 10 million miles away. But again, if I only rolled a 16, it would be 100,000 miles, 10,000 miles. They'd have to be within 1,000 miles, which is less than a round away. So I have emergency. Here comes an asteroid, like in Starship Troopers, when out of nowhere an asteroid popped up and it knocked out their communications tower. Is because they didn't pass the detection check at a high enough range to notice that asteroid was on a collision path until it was already within 1 round of combat distance, in which case you have to make an evasion check to avoid collision. And obviously Starship Troopers, they took falling damage and lost their communications tower as a result of it. So if you haven't seen the Starship Troopers movie, it is fantastic and worth your time. But yeah, so that's how scanning for adventure works. You can make a random check, determine the size of the object, the distance at which that your team can detect it, and whatever that result is, when you get that far away, that object appears. Let's go. This is your new encounter, whatever that is that you want to explore. And that's how you can hex crawl, which we'll talk about a little bit more later down in the chapter. Wild space predators. Many creatures hunt in wild space and have the ability to sense objects farther than a character's naked eye can see, similar to a mounted orrery, and can often travel through wild space at speeds fast enough to intercept a passing ship or creature. These predators can enter and align with gravity planes of a larger object to ride in its wake and potentially launch a surprise attack if the object is a creature. See the Creature Menagerie chapter below for more details about creatures in wild space. For example, a 15-foot scaver is sprinting towards a ship that's traveling through its territory near a patch of asteroids. The creatures can occupy a single the creature, 15 feet in size, can occupy a single 50-foot square. The DC to detect an object of this size using an orrery within 10,000 miles is 25. The DC to notice it within 10 miles is 19. The DC to observe details within 500 feet is a 13. A scan result of 21 won't detect the scaver approaching until it's within 10 miles. 25, 22, 21. So 10,000 miles, 1,000 miles. That should actually be 100 miles. So that is an error. Hold on. Let's fix it. We're on page 60. Page 60. R. A scan result of 21 won't detect the scaver approaching until it's within 100 miles, while a result less than 13 fails to notice the threat at all. Let's go verify that. $21.13.
50 feet in size, 21 that fails. 1,000 miles. 100 miles. What was the result? 18? What was it? 21? So 10,000 miles, 1,000. Yeah, 100 miles. And then DC 13, 50-foot scale. DC of 13. Fails to notice the threat at all because what's its distance? A 13, it would have to be 100,000 miles. Sorry, 10,000 miles, 25. 1,000 miles, 100 miles, 10 miles, 1 mile. So that's not actually accurate. 1 mile. While a result less than 13, 500 feet, fails to notice the threat at all. I should reword that. While a result less than 13 fails to notice the threat until it has already entered your gravity. There, that's actually the full statement. Until it is within 500 feet. And attacking. Fun thing about this, you think about dolphins riding the wakes, jumping in the wakes of ships. Similarly, a pod of space dolphins could slip into your gravity field and just coast with you because it doesn't have to expend any energy. When a smaller object is within a larger object's gravity field, it automatically gets pulled with it. A spherical gravity field pulls you towards the center of the planet. A planar gravity field drags you as though you're being towed or carried. So creatures can jump into the gravity wake of larger objects like Kandori space whales or ships, which are often mistaken to be Kandori, which is why Scavers attack ships. But there you go. So 500-foot scale ship can accommodate multiple large, like creatures 50 feet size or smaller. So it's not unusual to see creatures trying to jump into the wake of ships as they go by to give them basically a free ride to wherever your team is going. Which we talk about further down below in the creature menagerie section. Encounter distances. So objects such as moons and planets typically orbit along a predictable path, so slow in comparison to the speeds of spelljamming ships that they're relatively stationary. Unlike these relatively stationary objects, small, fast-moving objects such as a spelljamming ship and unusual creatures must be intercepted before they can be directly engaged. A wild space Ori can detect an object between 50 and 500 feet in scale, such as spelljamming ship vessels up to 100,000 miles away. A major helm's maximum speed requires 1 minute to travel 100,000 miles. So when a vessel encounters another between worlds, they are within direct detection range for 1 minute, allowing time for a lookout focusing on an Ori to detect the other ship. If neither ship detects the other, they eventually drift out of range unengaged. If one ship is aware of another that is not mutually aware, it can automatically close within 10,000 miles if you choose to continue closing distance, making a dexterity or intelligence stealth check against the target ship's current scan result and the crew's passive perception score. If you fail the check, the target ship notices you within D10 times
1,000 miles squares and roll initiative because you're closing for combat. And you're within 10 squares, 10,000 mile scale. That's your speed of combat. And then from there, you just zoom in using inertia shock and the downscaling that we have in the combat section above. If you succeed, you can close to any scale, minimum of 5 feet squares. A ship can close within 5 feet of a target or creature. A ship can close within 5 feet of a target, and creatures can board unnoticed with a successful dexterity stealth check against the passive perception score of the pilot and crew aboard the target ship. If both ships detect each other and both want to close distance, there is no need for a check. The ships close to 500 feet scale and roll initiative. If both ships detect each other and one wants to flee, use the pursuit section above to determine if the fleeing ship successfully escapes or if the pursuing ship can close the combat range and roll initiative. And then unnoticed encounters. If an approaching object isn't noticed, the DM determines if the ship flies past unaware or if there's a chance of collision, as detailed below. If the objects pass close enough, smaller objects and creatures can be swept up in the wake of a passing gravity plane. Objects in the void. Wild space in the astral sea is full of drifting objects that can be encountered or collided with. Flotsam are objects that are swept up in the gravity plane of a larger object or dropped from a ship. Flotsam naturally drifts outward towards the edge of the gravity plane. The amount of time it takes to drift out depends on the size of the gravity plane. So up to 5 feet in size, it takes 1 round to drift away. Up to 50 feet in size, it takes a minute. Up to 500 feet size, it takes 10 minutes. Up to 1 mile, it's 2 hours. Up to 10 miles, that's 1 day. And then 10 miles plus is spherical gravity. So, so anything up to, like the Spelljammer itself, the massive living ship is 3 miles in scale. So it occupies a 10-mile scale, but still has planar gravity. Anything that's larger than that 10-mile scale is going to have spherical gravity, which then you can't drift out of the gravity plane because you fall towards the center at falling speeds. But this is the amount of time it takes for something to drift out of your gravity field, depending on the size of the gravity field. Drifting objects. As described in SAIS, when an object leaves the gravity plane of an object, it gradually drifts to a stop. The amount of time spent drifting in wild space before stopping is determined by the momentum achieved while in the gravity plane as listed below. So if the drifting speed is at the 5-foot scale, you stop moving in 1 round. If the scale is 50 feet, then it's 1 minute. 500 feet, 10 miles. 1 mile is 2 hours. 10 miles is 1 day. 100 miles is 10 days. 1,000 miles squares is 100 days. And at the 10,000 mile scale, which is basically full spell jamming speed, and then you're let go, it'll take 1,000 days for you to run out of momentum. At the end of a duration, the drifting objects reduce the speed to the next lower movement. For example, an object initially drifting at 10,000 miles per round, which is 100 million miles per day, slows to 1,000 miles per round after 3 years and continues to drift after 1,000 days, right? And continues to drift as such for another 100 days at the 1,000 mile scale, and then slowing to 100 miles per round, etc., until finally drifting to a stop. An object that is drifting continues its path until swept up in another gravity plane or entering the spherical gravity of a planet or other object of larger size. Otherwise, the object may drift out of wild space into the astral sea at its current pace forever, as detailed in Traveling the Astral Sea section below. And then object size and hit points. So a 5-foot area of stone is described in the Dungeon Master's Guide as having 30 hit points per inch of thickness, which is approximately 2,000 hit points per 5-foot cube. Solid objects like asteroids, moons, and planets increasingly scale hit points based on the size of the object. So a heavy material like stone is 2,000 hit points per 5-foot square. So 20,000 at 50, 200,000 at 500, 2 million, 20 million, 200 million, 2 billion, 20 billion. at the 10,000 mile scale, and then it continues to excel from there. Composite material, which is a mix of organic and dense material, and then light materials like organic material. Or it could be like cotton candy, who knows. 5-foot scale, it has less hit points. And this is scaling with the materials that you build ships from. And then you have hollow. So we have light material, which is materials such as ceramic and thin wood. A composite material is a blend of light and heavy materials. Heavy materials is such like stone and metal. Hollow are thin material objects like ships and most creatures. So like it's not solid all the way through. Maybe I should have solid materials such as that might be a good idea. Let's take that. We're on page 62. I think that'd be an improvement. Light, solid materials such as ceramic and thin wood. Composite, a blend of solid materials a blend of light and heavy materials. A solid mass of light and heavy materials. A solid mass of materials stone or metal. A solid mass such as stone or metal. There we go. A solid mass of light and a solid mass of light and heavy. Yeah, okay, that English works good. And then hollow is thin material objects like ships and most creatures. And then hybrid is thick structures and unusually dense creatures like castle walls or an elemental creature. Like I guess like a gargoyle, for instance, like a massive gargoyle. There you go. So you can really scale up his hit points that way because it's just dense material. But it's still like fleshy, like golems, like a flesh golem. Hit points of objects versus creatures. So a 200-foot asteroid occupying a 4x4 space at the 50-foot scale made of heavy materials such as stone or metal has 80,000 hit points, while a 3-mile tall tree community occupying a 3x3 space at 1 mile scale made of wood, a light material, has 3 million hit points. 200-foot, 50-foot scale. 50-foot scale is 20,000 hit points. 4x4 space is times 4. So it's 20,000 times 4. That's how we get that 80,000 hit points for an 800-foot, for a 200-foot asteroid. 50 times 4. But the tree, 3x3 space at the 1 mile scale, 1 mile Light materials, 1 million miles, occupies a 3x3 space. 1 million times 3 equals 3 million hit points. So solid objects take considerably more damage than hollow objects like ships of the same scale. Worth noting that at the 50-foot scale, a 50-foot scale ship has 100 hit points. A 500-foot scale ship, we currently only have 250-foot ships, but they're 500 hit points, which is half of what the 500-foot scale, like total 500-foot ship would have 1,000 hit points. And then you gotta tear it apart with trebuchet and stuff like that, dealing like D6 times 10 damage per shot. So you want to use, you're gonna want to use a barrage, but that gives you a sense of scale. Like this hollow reading here is basically how you're scaling ships, and like a 5 foot like CR, like a CR half mercenary would have about 10 hit points. So that's where this is where that scale for 5 feet is from, aside from being 10 less than 50. But these two scales here align perfectly with fighter craft up to 50 feet in size and spelljamming vessels 100 hit points per 50-foot square. So that math all kind of tracks. Hybrid materials such as structures like a floating dwarven citadel or a community that carved their home into a 200-foot tall tree. The DM can decide whether an object or a creature is composed of a hybrid material with 100 hit points for each 5-foot space occupied, such as earth elementals, golems, and even undead. In this manner, a 1 mile space leviathan with thick skin has 100,000 hit points. Object size, scale of distance. Oh, and here we're talking about colliding objects. So when two objects collide at a speed of 500 feet per round or faster, both might take damage. For it's 500 feet. So because the reason I'm wording it that way is because falling damage in D&D is for creatures 50 feet in size or smaller, and you fall at 500 feet per round. That is the official speed of falling in D&D. So if you're moving faster than 500 feet per round, you're going to take collision damage or falling damage if you hit something. Slower than that, it might hurt, but you won't necessarily take damage. So for creatures, this is referred to as falling. For ships, this is referred to as crashing. When a ship crashes, a pilot can make a DC 15 dexterity saving throw, having the damage on a success. The amount of damage taken by each object in a collision is determined by the size and material of each object and the distance traveled before collision as listed on the table below. If a colliding object is a typical creature, ship, or other similarly delicate object, use the hollow scale. If a colliding object is a structure or similar object, use the hybrid scale. And if the colliding object is solid material, such as an asteroid, use the solid scale. Roll for each object. The lowest result is dealt to both. An object 2 or more scales larger than the other colliding object takes no damage. So if you've got a up to 50 feet in size and the scale of distance is D6 per 10 feet. And this is just typical falling. So if I were to fall, say 500 feet onto an asteroid that was 1 mile in scale, I would hit that asteroid and I would take 10d6 damage, but the asteroid would take none, because it's two scales larger than me. 50 feet, 500 feet, 1 mile. So a 1 mile asteroid would take no damage. But if the object was smaller than a mile, if it's at the 500-foot scale, then I'm the smallest object that's colliding here. So it's going to be D6 times 10 feet. It's 500 feet. That's a 10d6 damage that I'm going to take. And that the 500-foot, the object, whatever object I hit, say it's like 2,000 feet across, right? So that's going to be 500 feet times 4, and it's an asteroid, so it's a heavy object, 50 feet. No, we're at the it's a 2,000 foot, so it would have 800,000 hit points. And when my body flopped against it, I dealt 10d6 damage. That is negligible. That is inconsequential to the amount of damage that this asteroid can take. But I've now made a dent in that asteroid, And now you know why asteroids get so pockmarky when they've been in space for a while. So object size is up to 50 feet. The scale of distance is d6 damage per 10 feet. The maximum damage is, 20 d6 damage. Maximum distance is 200 feet or 5d6 per 50 feet. So speed is 500 feet per round. Maximum damage is after 200 feet, 20 d6 potential damage, which is still nothing when I flop against the asteroid. Damage multiplier. So maximum distance. If I am a hollow object hitting you, I'm not going to have any damage multiplier. If it is a hybrid material, I'm going to multiply the damage. So if this was a earth elemental that was slamming into an asteroid, and the earth elemental was like, 30 feet in size, then it would do 20d6, or rather 20d60, or 200d6, or 20d6 times 10 damage. So it could actually have, that's 120, 1,200. That's still nothing to the 800,000 hit points that this asteroid would have. But if it was another asteroid hitting that asteroid, it would do potentially 10,000 damage, which is still nothing to the 800,000 damage that 200-foot asteroid would have. But you just did 10,000 damage to it. So you've torn out a hole of it. 10,000 damage of heavy material. That's effectively a 500-foot space, right? Because, heavy material. 10,000. That'd be like a 25-foot crater that you just created on that asteroid that your asteroid hit with. Because, say it dealt 10,000 damage, that's a 5x5 space at the 5-foot scale, which is a 25-foot space. That's a crater 25 feet across, 25 feet down. So, for example, if a pilot flies a dragonfly ship, a 200-foot hollow object, Firefly, 200 feet. A 200-foot hollow ship, 50-foot scale, 100. It'd have 400 hit points. A pilot flies a 200-foot ship with 400 hit points. Object flies at 1,000 feet, crashes into a 3-mile asteroid, a solid object, to destroy a group of mind flayers, which are medium-sized creatures standing on it. Mind flayers are creatures less than 50 feet in size, taking d6 times per 10 feet, or 70 damage, 20 d6, because after 200 feet, you've capped out your distance, and the pilot flew 1,000 feet to hit those. So you're basically forcing those Illithid to fall into the ship because you're smashing the ship into the Illithid. That's effectively forcing them to take falling damage against you. And then they can save for half to try to partially dodge it. So Mind Flayers are creatures less than 50 feet in size, taking 10d6 time per 10 feet, or 70 damage. A Dragonfly is hollow, 50 to 500 feet in size, taking d6 times 10 per 100 feet, or 350 damage. The asteroid is solid, 1 to 10 miles in size. Since it's 2 scales larger than the Dragonfly, it takes no damage. The Dragonfly is colliding with both the Mind Flayers and the asteroids. The asteroid is solid into a 3-mile asteroid. 2 scales larger, because the Dragonfly is at the 50-foot scale, and because it fits inside like multiple 50-foot squares, it doesn't require a 500-foot square, so it's at the 50-foot scale, and the asteroid requires a 1-mile scale minimum, so it is 1-mile scale. That is 2 degrees larger. So the asteroid would take 0 damage. Since it is 2 scales larger than a Dragonfly ship, it takes no damage. The Dragonfly ship is colliding with both the Mind Flayers and the asteroid they are standing on, while the Mind Flayers are only colliding with the ship. The Mind Flayers take 70 damage, potentially killing them, while the Dragonfly takes 350 damage if the pilot fails the save. This is enough to potentially destroy the Dragonfly ship, but it's superfluous damage to the asteroid. There you go. Makes sense, right? And in this sense, you can have any scale object hit any other scale object and determine damage. We use these mechanics in the Mega Kaiju video that I have on my channel. So if you check the channel down below and look at the Space Kraken Mega Kaiju video, it walks through building massive scale creatures using these hit points and what kind of damage they can do to structures. In this case, it was a 1,500 foot Space Kraken attacking the 3 mile Rock of Brawl. They're capable of damaging each other. The Space Kraken was going after all the crops on the underside of the asteroid. So the encounter was to chase off the Kraken before it eats all your vegetation and destroys your air supply for the Rock of Brawl. Traveling the Astral Sea, color pools, traveling in wild space, mapping, spherical gravity, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 pages to go. We've looked at this before. I don't think I need to make any modifications to any of this, but we're going to look at it anyway, just for the lulz. This is all mapping system stuff. It doesn't really have to do anything with characters making checks or anything. It's just tracking movement, basically. Well, the Astral Sea a little bit, but you'll see. So wild space systems floating within the Astral Sea, as described in SAIS. This should be lowercase. 63. Oh, no, that is correct. Wild space systems float within the Astral Sea. As described in SAIS, creatures don't age there, nor do they need to eat, sleep, or breathe. Creatures can move either by their flying or swimming speed, or by astral flight. So astral flight. Astral flight is movement by will within the Astral Sea, similar to piloting a ship without needing a helm. The speed of an astral flight is 5 feet times your astral ability modifier, minimum 5 feet. A creature's astral ability modifier can be Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. Creatures can take the dash action during astral flight, similar to other methods of movement. Notice that's 5 feet times what will probably be at most a 5 bonus. That's 25 feet or like 5 squares, which is the same speed that you can move 5 squares on a helm. The scales are different, obviously, but the number of squares during combat are the same. Scaling movement. Spelljammers and creatures that can travel between worlds at heightened speeds can do so in the Astral Sea as well, increasing or decreasing the scale of distance between objects encountered as detailed in the encounter distance section above. Astral flight can scale movement per round up to 10 mile squares, similar to a minor Spelljammer helm. So you have a native flight speed of 5 feet, but you can increase your scale to match that of a minor Spelljamming helm, which is 10 million miles per day, which is largely irrelevant in the Astral Sea, as we'll look at down here. Travel time in the Astral Sea. Time spent traveling from one location to another isn't determined by the distance between them. Rather, travel between locations in the Astral Sea is measured in days, determined by how familiar you are with the intended location as listed below. Familiarity. This is taken from Teleportation Circle. For the Teleportation spell. Very familiar, seen casually, viewed once, description only. So this is the number of days, D6, 2D8, 3D10, 4D12. On the last day, roll 3D8. The result is how many hours pass during the last day before arriving within range to notice it with the naked eye, as detailed 63L, page 63L, change to, there should not be a period there. On the last day, roll 3d8. The result is how many hours passed during the last day before arriving within range to notice it with the naked eye, as listed on the visibility table above. For example, if you're very familiar with a fortress carved into an asteroid 20 miles in size within the astral sea, the travel time is 3d6 days, because you're very familiar with it. During the last day of travel, you arrive 10,000 miles from the asteroid. Yeah, after 3d8 hours, you would arrive within 10,000 miles, because at the 3 mile scale, at the 10 mile scale, you notice objects with your naked eye within 10,000 miles. Once an object is noticed either with the naked eye or detected through an orrery, you can close distance as detailed in the encounter distance section above. So distances become relative in distance when you can actually visualize what it is, or you can spot or detect an object. Then you drop out of familiarity time into an actual map scale of thousands of miles or hundreds of feet or whatever the scale is going to end up being. So you can shift between that exploration, nebulous space-time of floating in the astral sea and then snap it back onto a finite grid with, we're in the astral sea and we have no idea, it's going to take days or whatever to get to our location, but right now we're tracking this dragon, and that dragon is 1,000 miles away. We can just close distance with it while in the astral sea as though it were wild space. If an object or location is encountered in the astral sea, exploring it doesn't waste any previous travel time, but if the traveler takes a long rest, the duration of travel is re-rolled minus the number of days already traveled. Changing destinations loses any travel time. Conflicting destinations. So when traveling through the astral sea, whether by spelljamming ship or astral flight, the creature that is most familiar with the destination determines the duration of the journey. If creatures traveling together have conflicting destinations, resolve the conflict as a spell-jamming piloting duel, which we described in the equipment chapter above in chapter 1. If creatures traveling together have conflicting destinations, resolve the conflict as a spell-jamming pilot duel. The highest result determines the destination. A creature that loses a contest can make another opposed check after D4 days or 2 days. Creatures can depart for separate destinations when neither can notice the other with the naked eye. For example, if passengers on a spell-jamming craft depart for another location, they can roll for the duration of the journey once the ship is beyond 10 miles, because you're no longer in its bubble of influence, because you don't see each other anymore. Astral tracking. While traveling the astral sea, a creature can focus. You can find a ship in the astral sea the same way. Just like with the fortress that's anchored in the astral sea on an asteroid, if you know somebody's escaped into the astral sea, if you've only seen them like on an orrery, it's like they just escaped into astral space, sir. It's like, well, we saw them, but we only have a light description of them. So that means it's going to take us a long time. It's going to take us 4d12 days to find them again. And if they're heading for a location they're familiar with, we'll never catch them. So, but we get into that. So give me a minute and we'll get there. Astral tracking. While traveling the astral sea, a creature can focus on the thoughts of a creature, object, or location and make an intelligence or wisdom, insight, or perception check and roll the number of days twice. The DC of the check determines the tracker's familiarity with the object or creature as listed below. So in this example, we were talking about tracking a ship into the astral sea. It's going to be a DC 31. And this is how long it's going to take 12 days to find them because you only have that vague description. If you were actually within visual range of them, you could drop that down to viewed once, which is a DC of 25 and only take 3d10 days to find them. The DM rolls one duration and the player rolls the other. If the check is successful, use the shorter duration to reach the target. Otherwise, use the higher number.
So you know it's out there. You'll find it eventually, but your perception checks suck. So it's going to take longer to find them. So it could be like D6 days for them to find the very familiar location that the ship is looking for, but maybe they roll a 6. And then miraculously, you viewed them once, and you're only rolling 3d10. Maybe you roll like 3. So you'll actually be able to find that ship before it can find its destination and potentially intercept it while it's still in the astral sea. The DM rolls one duration and the player rolls the other if the check is successful. Use the shorter duration to reach the target, otherwise use the higher number. If the target isn't in the astral sea, the traveler is led to either the nearest color pool leading to the system or the plane of existence where the creature is currently located, or a false destination as described in the sidebar below. There's a 50% chance for either of them. The traveler doesn't know if they will find the target, a color pool, or a false destination until they actually arrive. So false destinations. If the description of a target, object, or location is false, use the description listing to determine the DC and travel time to reach it. Upon noticing the target, make a DC 10 intelligence, wisdom, insight, perception check. Success confirms if the destination is false. A creature can roll again at the end of every hour spent interacting with the target object or location. So basically, if you arrive at a false destination, it's only a DC 10 intelligence or wisdom check to determine, no, this actually isn't what we're looking for. It's a false destination. And if you fail that check every hour, you can check again until you're convinced that, yeah, this is actually the wrong location. If you keep failing, you'll keep being spoofed that this is the right place, and the DM might want to keep that roll to themselves. Hey, we mentioned color pools. What's a color pool? Color pools are portals from the astral plane to other worlds. See the DMG for more information about the colors of specific pools and what planes of existence they identify. I think I have to change that to... This is page 64. They don't have color pools anymore. So, see the DMG 2014 for more detail, for more information about the colors of specific pools and what planes of existence they identify. A color pool is typically D6 times 10 feet diameter, large enough to accommodate the beam length of most spelljamming craft, though the destination is determined by the DM, and is not necessarily a location that a ship can navigate within. At the DM's discretion, some pools are larger, capable of accommodating vessels. These rare color pools could be the focus of war between spelljamming craft, which are up to 50 feet in size, right? At the DM's discretion, some pools are larger, capable of accommodating entire vessels. These rare color pools could be the focus of war between planes and systems, heavily guarded by the native creatures of the destination and under siege in the astral by their enemies. Entering wild space. So, contrary to traveling the astral sea section above, when traveling to a wild space system without a specific location within it, you arrive within 1 million miles of the system's edge, and you can detect planetary objects within the system while focusing on an orrery. Your position relative to your destination within the system is determined by making a wisdom or intelligence check or intelligence history check. Compare the results to the table below. So a natural 20 results in arriving within the system close enough to notice the destination with the naked eye, as listed in the visibility table above. Hey, what's going on, Andy? Well, thank you. I appreciate that. 50 years of age, and I'm feeling pretty good. A successful check results in appearing within you make your check. When you arrive at a wild space system, you make your check. If you roll a natural 20, you actually arrive inside the system close enough to notice the destination with the naked eye. Like, there is Earth. We made it. A successful check results in appearing within D4 times 100 million miles of the destination in a random direction, but no farther than the edge of the system. Failing results in arriving along the edge of the wild space system at a random position,
and a natural 1 results in appearing outside the system within 1,000,000 miles at a random location. Familiarity, if you're very familiar, DC 13, 19, 25, 31. So the less familiar you are with the system that you're going to, the more likely you're going to snap out of astral space along the edge of it, and you have no idea where you're navigating. And then you'll have to use your orrery to navigate inside that space from there. So roll a D8 and consult the diagram above. The location marked A represents the destination halfway between the center and edge of the system. Each number represents a position at the edge of the system relative to the destination. The result of 1 is closest and 8 is farthest. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if this is the center of the system, this is the outer edge of the system, and this is the destination. If I roll a 1, I'm the closest I could possibly be at the distance that we just determined up here by your result. If I roll horribly, if I roll an 8, I am absolutely farthest away. Or if I rolled a 1, I would appear outside the system at this location relative to that object. Navigating wild space and the astral sea in 5e Spelljammer. Gaining familiarity. So you can gain familiarity with a location by spending a number of days exploring or researching it, as listed on the table below. So location familiarity, and again, these familiarities are the teleportation spell. So description, viewed once, seen casually, or very familiar. So to have a description of a location means that you've never explored it and you've only read about it or been told about it, right? It's a description. You haven't actually been there. So it would take D4 days to research that to have a good description enough for you to find it through the astral. If you've been there once, you only have to have explored that space once for you to have viewed it once, but you can gain that level of familiarity by researching it for 2d6 days. Seeing casually, you have to spend at least 2 days there, D4 days, and you would have to research for 3d8 days to gain that level of familiarity. And to be actually very familiar with a location, you can't research it. You actually have to go and explore that space for about a month. And then you can have very familiar, like I'm very familiar with this pub, that marketplace, the courtyard at the hotel that I'm staying at, and the park down the street. And there's a strip club. So like I'm getting pretty familiar with this neighborhood, and I've been here for a month. I feel like I could be part of this community. Whether you explore or research a location, refer to the visibility table above to determine the size of location you're gaining familiar with. So if I want to gain familiarity with a pub, a small pub that's like say 200 feet in size, that's going to be the 50-foot scale because it's less than 500 feet, so it fits at the 50-foot scale. Which means that 200-foot pub would have a detailed of 25, 19, or 13. Let's look at what the actual wording is. Whether you explore or research a location, refer to the visibility table above to determine the size of the location you're gaining familiarity with. You can gain familiarity, is listed in the table below. Whether you explore or research a location. Oh yeah, there are no actual checks on it. It's just the visibility tells you like what the scale is. There you go. It's probably not necessary, but there it is. Exploring a location. So exploring a location requires you to directly view it through scrying and similar magic or being physically within the chosen area. At the end of the duration, you automatically gain the degree of familiarity listed. For example, that's the research check. Note, whether you explore or research a location, refer to the visibility table above to determine the size of the location you're gaining familiarity with. There. Researching familiarity. Roll the number of days spent researching as listed on the chosen degree of familiarity above. At the end of this duration, make an intelligence history check. The DC of the check is determined by the size of the location researched
and the degree of familiarity gained. The degree of familiarity corresponds with the DC of the listed sizes of locations on the table, visibility above, that you're becoming familiar with. Description uses the listed detailed range DC. Viewed once uses the listed notice range. Seen casually uses the listed detection range DC, and very familiar cannot be gained through research. If the check succeeds, you gain the chosen degree of familiarity with the research location. Otherwise, you can continue researching and roll again at the end of the additional time spent. For example, the Rock of Brawl occupies a 10-mile space. Description: after 2 days, D4 days, the DC is 4. Viewed once, after 7 days, 2d6 days, the DC is 10. Seen casually, let's see. Yeah, description: viewed once, seen casually. These are better. These are better levels of familiarity. The DC gets higher, and the duration of time takes longer. That all makes sense. Traveling in wild space. Unlike the astral sea, the physical distance between objects in wild space are measurable. This makes mapping systems reliable to travelers, mapping between worlds. Objects can be charted on a map with a square grid similar to the tactical maps detailed in the combat chapter above, but the scale of square are large enough for planetary objects to occupy. Spelljammer's Adventures in Space, published by WotC, doesn't provide specific rules of system organization, though generally there is a central star providing warmth and light throughout, with planets in orbits, moons, and other planetary objects. Below are 2 examples: Zaraxis space and Realm space. So, map. 1 square is 100 million miles. A is the star. B, C, D are the planets. So you have B, C, and D. E is the Imperial Citadel, which we know is in the same orbit as Zarandar. And then the edge of Zaraxis space is at F. So there's our wild space system. It is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 400. It's 800,000. It's 800 million miles across. Zaraxis space has a radius of 400 million miles. As depicted in the illustration above, each square on the map represents 100 million miles. Similar to many overland maps, the character's ship can move only 1 square each day while the planets remain relatively still. Zaraxis space is small, requiring only a 9 by 9 space to map the entire system, where the central star and each planet occupies a separate square on a map. In comparison, Realm space has a diameter of 6.4 billion miles at 100 million miles scale. A full system map requires a 65 by 65 square map. While virtual tabletops like Roll20 provide a large map environment capable of accommodating 100 by 100 square maps, this can be inconvenient while playing in person on a grid of 1-inch squares. Alternatively, increasing the scale of map reduces the number of squares required. For example, increasing the scale of each square to 400 million miles reduces the map of Realm space to a more manageable 17 by 17 square grid, which can be further reduced if only portions of the system map is needed during the adventure. As depicted below, the distance from the edge of Realm space to the central star at the 400 million mile scale can be depicted on a 10 by 10 grid, square grid. So there you go. A is the sun, and F is the edge of wild space, and each square is 400 million miles. 400, 800, 1.2, 1.6, 2, 2.4, 2.8, 3.2. Inner planets, B, 400 million miles from the sun. Realm space has 5 planets that are in orbit within 400 million miles of the central star, occupying the same square of space on the map above. See Realm space inner planet maps below for each planet's individual orbit. So, reducing scale during exploration. While increasing the scale of a map reduces the number of squares depicted, reducing the scale of squares can provide more details in a similar region of space. For example, in the Realm space inner planets map,
below, the scale is reduced to 50 million miles per square, allowing each planet to be mapped separately and interacted with more directly than at the 400 million mile scale illustrated above. A ship traveling at 100 million miles per day can travel approximately 1 square in 12 hours. On the map below, Toril D is 8 squares away from Chandos, which is at F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. Requiring 4 days to travel between these planets. Map key. And here's our map key. The Sun, Anadia, Collier, Toril. Toril is the planet on which we live. It's fantasy Earth. Using the orrery scanning rules detailed in the visibility section above and the encounter tables included with SAIS, a DM checking for encounters twice a day can roll whenever the character enters a new square during exploration. Alternatively, if the DM has already decided there will be an encounter, they can choose to roll 1d6 plus 1 to determine how many squares away from Toril the encounter occurs. The DM can choose to do both. If the character ventures beyond the inner planets, adventures can scale out to the larger realm space map above, where checking for encounters each square of movement is now every 4 days instead of 12. A wild space system generally includes a central star and one or more worlds, which are typically a planet with one or more moons. Planets. Planets are generally objects large enough to have spherical gravity that orbit a central star, moving far slower than ships with major helms. For example, in the illustration below, Toril A travels 1.6 billion miles around the Sun B in 1 year, which is approximately 400 million miles per season, 4 million miles per day, 200,000 miles per hour, 400 miles per round. The DM is able to adjust these speeds as desired, but on a system map with 100 million miles square grids, a planet moves 1 square approximately every month. See? There you go. 400 miles per round. Sorry, I'm thinking. Yeah. Moons. Moons are generally objects large enough to have spherical gravity that orbit a planet. Moons orbit closer and complete circling, and moons orbit slower and complete circling a planet faster than planets around stars. Using Toril again as a reference, A, its moon, Selûne, B, is 183,000 miles away, or 4 squares at the 50,000 mile scale. Selûne takes about 30 days to orbit Toril once. This is approximately 1 square per day, as depicted below. So a 50-mile scale, there you go, 1, 2, 3, 30. These scales are approximations to simplify planetary object movement for a DM over the duration of a campaign. The DM can use these examples as guidelines for planets and moons of any distance by shifting the scale on the map. There you go. Spherical gravity. So, objects that occupy a space larger than 10 miles, like moons and planets, typically possess spherical gravity. When something enters the space of an object with spherical gravity, it naturally falls towards the object at its current speed or at 500 feet per round, whichever is fastest, until it collides with the object as detailed in the colliding object section above. Piloting a Spelljammer ship within the atmosphere of a planet generally doesn't impede movement, but a ship in moving too fast along the surface risks colliding with terrain or structures. Though movement isn't impeded within spherical gravity, the space your destination occupies limits how fast you can approach it. Otherwise, you may fly past it within a single round of movement before you can see it. The range listed in the detailed range section column and the visibility table above provides the maximum speed a ship can travel per round without passing it as determined by the space occupied by the destination. For example, the city of Waterdeep occupies a 10-mile space. The maximum speed a ship can move without passing it is 100 million miles per round, or 10 squares on a 10-mile square grid. On a 10-mile square grid, a particular pub that occupies a 500-foot space can be approached no faster than 1 mile per round, or 10 squares at the 500-foot square scale grid. Here's a map that I painted of a ring world in orbit around the planet. I do all my own illustrations, so all the illustrations, graphs, and stuff in this book, that was stuff that I designed along with the book's writing. Departing spherical gravity. The amount of time required to enter wild space. Did I finish this section? Oh, yeah. 500. There we go. Good. Departing spherical gravity. So the amount of time required to enter wild space from the surface of a planetary object is determined by how much space the object occupies and the type of spelljamming helm. So space occupied is a 100 miles space. It takes 1 round for either ship to leave. 1,000 miles space, this would be like the planet of Toril, for example, is 8,000 miles. So it would actually occupy a 10-mile square. So a major spelljamming helm could leave the gravity of Toril in 1 round. But a minor helm that is 100 times slower than a major helm, it can only, it would take 10 minutes to leave gravity, which is, by the way, pretty similar to the amount of time that it takes for a ship to leave orbit on Earth. It takes 8 minutes to leave Earth at the normal speed that rockets fly. For example, Toril is approximately 8,000 miles in diameter, occupying a 10,000-mile space. A ship with a major helm can escape Toril gravity in 1 round by entering an adjacent 10,000-mile square, while it takes a ship with a minor helm 10 minutes. And then we have gravity fields. So clusters of objects without spherical gravity drifting together naturally align their gravity plane over time as they collide and shift about into fields. Rings surrounding a planet are examples of rock and other debris smaller than 10 miles in radius that can align at the same gravity plane that occupies the space surrounding the planet, beyond the influence of its spherical gravity. In the illustration to the left and below, a small 800-mile planet, A, occupies a 1,000-mile square with rings of rocks ranging from 50 feet miles in size, from 50 feet to 5.5 miles in size, B. And so the ring here is B, surrounding the planet outside of its gravity field influence. So it forms a ring, and here we show communities growing on the ring. This is sufficient space for ranging from 50 feet to 5.5 miles in size. B, this is sufficient space for vegetation and communities to take root. Water caught in the gravity plane drains into the spaces between the rocks, forming a long river system and weather on both sides of the ring's gravity plane. So this water here that these gondolas are floating on, that's at the center point of the gravity plane. And a similar community to this is on the underside. But both of them looking at the planet, it just looks like this. And that's the last page of the chapter, and it's 9:20. So, cancel. So, hey, we did it. If I can get this stuff to knock out. Okay, so we're going to come back on Monday, and we're going to work with ship hazards. Our major obstacle is fires, because there's a new hazard in 5e24 called burning, which is D4 fire damage until you put it out. So we're going to be deconstructing the fire hazard and rebuilding it. There's also foul and deadly air to consider, and smoke that comes from. So you have fire, which creates smoke, which creates foul and deadly air. That's our logical progression here through the hazards. And then we have blending air envelopes for different levels of purity. And then we have, as a separate hazard, infestations and the type of infestations. This is a pest from Strixhaven. Infestation severity. And then we'll look at morale and mutiny as a hazard. And then wild storms are a hazard. And then we'll get into the creature menagerie. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. But I anticipate having to do a lot of work with fire. So this page, these 2 pages might take up Monday's session. If everything goes well, the rest of these sections shouldn't really have to do anything. They should all be fine. Yeah, so that's it for now. I'm going to be back tomorrow morning to do more artwork for the Eberron adventure that we're going to be publishing on the DMsGuild. And I do artwork Monday through Fridays in the mornings. And then I do game design like this on Mondays and Thursday nights. I started late tonight because my day was just weird. So I had to start late, but I'm glad I had the time to put this in. So, but once we get, so here's our list of updates. Let's tack on chapter 4. This is chapter 4, exploration. And chapter 5 is hazards. And this is where we'll start next time. But this is the list of changes that I need to make to the book for it to be compliant with 2024. We've already updated chapter 1, so we have to dig in on chapter 2. I'm going to do that on Saturdays, I think. But I anticipate being done. With God's blessing, we'll have ship hazards done on Monday. We'll resolve the creature menagerie on Thursday. And I've already looked at random wild space system. This doesn't require anything, but we might be able to do this on Thursday next week as well. And so if everything runs smoothly, we'll be able to have this published Monday, by Monday, if not Saturday, but by Monday. So we have hazards, creatures, and wild space system. Lazaraxis is already resolved. So we should have it published anytime after the 16th, hopefully no later than the 20th. And once that's complete, we can actually start getting serious about publishing the Spelljammer subclasses that we have. Each spelljamming subclass, each class in the game has a subclass designed to use the mechanics that we've built in combat and Spelljammer's Combat and Exploration. And again, anyone that wants to read along the PDF of the book, the entire PDF is a sample on the DMsGuild. Here on the DMsGuild, Spelljammer Combat and Exploration, which we can get access to here by following this link here. The Spelljammer subclasses is a read-only document that anyone can read here, but you're welcome to check it out. And we've began designing the I think we're going to actually call it Monsters and Machines, but currently here it's labeled Warforged Machines, which is the Mecha Kaiju book that we're building so that characters can run around in like 30 or 400-foot robots fighting massive scale creatures, the same as you would with normal D&D combat at the 5-foot scale, using the combat mechanics that we've developed for Spelljammer. You're basically just building Lancer-style mecha using 5e rules to fight other mecha or giant kaijus or attacking fortresses as siege weapons. Super cool, fun stuff that we can start building. I want to run a campaign on my Discord channel. My Discord is here, free access. Please join. Be welcome. We're currently working on a Martial Powers Mega Dungeon, but I'm going to want to switch gears soonish and start running a Spelljammer mecha campaign built off of Storm King's Thunder, where instead of the Storm King, you have a Dwarven Citadel that has a mecha pilot hangar deck as a facility that you go from asteroid community to asteroid community, kind of XCOM 2 style, fighting kaiju away from the asteroids so that you can protect those communities. Meanwhile, also conducting trade between them to help advance the strength, like the defenses of each of the communities and their resource management, and becoming more self-sufficient while specializing materials they can share as a collective. You are the sheriff and trade route that connects the different asteroid communities. So the team will have control over where the Citadel will go from turn, like bastion turn to bastion turn. You'll go to different, stay or go to different locations, and every bastion turn there's a potential of having a kaiju attack. So we can be running characters at the 5-foot scale doing adventure stuff on these different asteroid communities, but
every Bastion turn, which is roughly every week, there's a chance that a kaiju is going to attack one of the asteroid communities. So whatever it is that you've got going on, you got to drop it, gear up in your mech suits, and then go fight the kaiju to get rid of them. And now you might have to repair at that location or bolster defenses, or maybe an uprising occurs because people are freaking out that needs to be dealt with. Or since you're distracted over here, maybe criminal elements are taking advantage of your distraction by looting this other community over here. So there's a lot of ways we can make it a dynamic, interesting, progressively generated campaign on a week-by-week basis using the structure of the Bastion campaign, which is another book that we're building that we've been developing here on stream as well. So Spelljammer, Martial Powers, Bastion campaigns, all working together in the same Storm King's Thunder campaign, which I intend to start running once we finish our current mega dungeon. We're at 9th level right now. I anticipate them concluding the adventure or that dungeon soon. And then we'll be building and leaning into Storm King's Thunder. So I'm looking forward to it, guys. I'm really looking forward to it. This is going to be super fucking cool. But if you think this stuff is neat, I would love to earn your subscription. Like, subscribe, bell icons. Check out some of my books if you're a D&D nerd. They all have free preview. Check them out. If you think they add value to your game, I'd be honored if you purchased, but you can look at all of them for free. So that's it for now, guys. I'm out of here. I'll be back tomorrow morning. Tag along if you want to watch my artwork. So cheers, guys. Appreciate you.